So now the vignette. All right, here's the story with vignette. If you come over here and click, hold, and drag on the slider and go to the right, you're going to lighten your corners. And if you go to the left, you're going to darken your corners. And notice now I've got still have the clipping on. I'm going to turn that off. That's annoying. And you're going to see what negative vignette is. And you're going to try to bring the viewer's attention into the image. Or if you go positive, all right? So I'm just going to double click on that and get that to go back to no vignette. And I just want to explain to you that the vignetting feature was first put in image editing software to get rid of the dark corners in some of our images. And what causes natural vignetting in your images, in other words, a natural darkening around the corners, is your lens shade is being captured by the sensor as well as the image or the scene in front of the camera. So how would that happen if the manufacturers are making their lens shades? Well, when you have a zoom lens, it's sometimes a little bit difficult. Other times, some manufacturers will have a lens hood and then you get your hands on a different one and it's not the same length and it's longer, and the wide angle of the lens picks up the inside of the lens shade and all that kind of stuff. So we ended up with that going on. There's a couple other reasons why, like if you have filters and you're stacking your filters on top, well, you know that the outside part that you screw your filters on with and all that kind of stuff, well, that's usually a black metal of some nature or a dark metal, and the more you stack on, the more you're adding for the wide angle of the lens or any angle of your lens to actually capture that as opposed to a clear scene. That's why you see a lot of filters these days they call thin filters. Yeah. Anyways, so the original thing was, well, we need to lighten those corners a little bit. So we create this. And then, of course, some genius engineer says, well, if we can lighten the corners, then why can't we darken them? Anyways, I'm not going to put a vignette on it, but let's just play around with this a little bit. Let's say I do put a little bit of a vignette on here. And I'm going to go to my favorite number here, which is 10. Now, notice that when we have a value for this, we've got midpoint, roundness, feather, highlights, and all that kind of fun stuff. So the first thing you need to do is you need to choose a style of this. And this one here is called highlight priority. And that's the default. And basically what it's doing is it's setting the vignetting feature to pay attention to the highlights in the area that you're trying to create the vignette, and it's trying to darken those down before it darkens anything else down. That's why it's called highlight priority. It's given priority to the highlights. Now, the other one that you have is color priority, and then you have paint overlay. We'll get into these guys in a minute, but I just want to finish off with highlight priority and then what these sliders are all about. So now we have a midpoint of where we're making our thing. In fact, I like -10, but I'm going to bring it down to -100. And then you can see the midpoint. Midpoint is in the image, in the middle of the image. And if I move my slider to the right, it's going to expand my midpoint out. And if I move my slider to the left, it's going to contract in the center. So you can play around with how much is being done. So click on that, bring it back here. Roundness. Well, roundness is this. If I come over this way, right, I'm making the roundness go one direction. Maybe this isn't the best image, but then if I come over here, I can make it, and let's just do this. There you go. If I bring that down, my midpoint down there, you can see down at the bottom, down here, not too round, it's more of a rectangle. See how it's more of a rectangle? And if I come over here and add some roundness to see how it's rounding out the corners, there you go. It's turning it more into an oval, if you will. All right, so I'm just going to put that back to there, and maybe we'll just come down here and just go just double click. No, I'm just going to come in here. No, I'm just going to leave my midpoint where it is. All right, so I got -20 on my vignette. I know I had -10 the last time, so let me just click in there and just go -10. All righty then. So now we come over here to color priority, and it's taking the color in the image as a priority when it's doing all of its thing for that. And in this case here, the only color it would really want to take in as a priority is down in this area here. And if I was to, with the color priority, let's see if we do this. All right, let's just take a look at this. You see how much darkness and all that kind of stuff we have going on there. If I come over here to this one, see how it darkens it? Color priority. There you go. Not going to see it up here, but we will see it down there. And I'm wondering, that's not bad. That's not bad. And I'm just going to leave this at -50 for demonstration purposes with all this kind of stuff. Now, if I was to take my midpoint and do that, and then take my roundness and do something like that, we'll look at this with a different image later on. What I can do is I can play with the transition between this edge, the vignette, and the actual image. And if I do this, I'm going to tighten up. You see? Tighten it up, and you see how we have those roundness? And then we come this way, and we have more of an oval. All right? And there's your feather, and I'm going to transition that really smoothly. And then we're at 100%, and so it's a nicer, smoother transition between the vignette and the actual image. Put that back where it belongs, and then we have highlights. So let's just see what's going on here with our midpoints, and we're going to play around with our highlights a little bit. I'm not seeing much going on with this image, so maybe we'll revisit this with another image a little bit later. We'll leave our highlights alone. Let's see what goes on with paint overlay. Notice our highlights are gone. And now we can come over here. We've got our midpoint. At 50, we got our roundness set to this. And it all has to do with how the vignette is kind of working its way through here. Notice that it's kind of like a semi-transparent kind of a thing that's going on. At least that's what it looks like to me with paint overlay. I'm going to go back over to highlight priority. You can see definitely. So we've got that going on. The next thing, and I think I'm going to just put this back to 0 because I want to talk about grain.